Iran is now laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz in a bid to shut down the critical economic waterway. That's according to U.S. officials telling the Wall Street Journal. On social media yesterday afternoon, President Trump warned Iran not to do so. Then just minutes later, he posted that the U.S. had struck 10 inactive mine-laying boats. An hour later, U.S. Central Command posted this video of what it said were strikes carried out on Iranian ships, including 16 mine layers. Comes as Iran said it carried out its heaviest and most intense strikes since the start of the war, targeting U.S. and Israeli assets across the region. Drones fell near the Dubai International Airport. 2 cargo ships were struck off the coast of the UAE, as was an apartment building in central Beirut. Meanwhile, the U.S. and Israel continue to carry out their strikes in Iran, with residents of Tehran telling The Guardian it was the worst night of aerial bombardment so far. And back here in Washington, military officials held a closed-door briefing with members of the Senate Armed Services Committee yesterday. Senate Democrats left that meeting demanding public hearings. Watch.
I emerged from this briefing as dissatisfied and angry, frankly, as I have from any past briefing in my 15 years in the Senate. I guess I am most concerned about the threat to American lives of potentially deploying our sons and daughters on the ground in Iran. We seem to be on a path toward deploying American troops on the ground in Iran to accomplish any of the potential objectives here.
Now, yesterday's briefing was with staff members. It was not at the principal level, not Hegseth, not Rubio. So some senators told me going in they didn't expect to get the level of depth that they wanted, but a concerning readout there from Senator Blumenthal. Meanwhile, as this war rages on, we are getting a clearer picture of the toll it's taking on U.S. troops in the region. The Pentagon said yesterday about 140 U.S. service members have been wounded so far in this war with Iran. Most had minor injuries, according to the Pentagon spokesman, including more than 100 service members who have already returned to duty. But 8 remain listed as severely injured and are said to be receiving the highest level of medical care. 7 American military members have also been killed in action to date, succumbing to injuries suffered in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. I want to go right now live to the ground in Dubai. MS Now reporter Josh Einiger is there. Josh, what is the latest that you're seeing on the ground? Sort of set the stage for us as we set into the 12th or 13th day of this conflict.
Well, Ali, it's changed perceptibly in the last couple of days, certainly here in downtown Dubai, where I'm standing right now. When we arrived a few days ago, the Iranians were basically peppering the airspace of the UAE with attack drones, more than 100 every day. And in the last couple of days, it has seemed a lot less indiscriminate, far fewer drones into the airspace, but hitting more strategic targets. Just this morning, as you point out, there were 2 drones intercepted over the airport. The debris that fell injured a few people. And there are also, right now as we speak, are 2 cargo ships that are disabled, one reported to be on fire on either side of the Strait of Hormuz. So the Iranians certainly have been targeting much more strategic, critical infrastructure, particularly oil infrastructure, as they try to extract a very heavy price on the Gulf states and the West for this campaign against Iran. Ali.
MS Now reporter Josh Einiger live from Dubai. Thank you for your reporting and stay safe as you're over there. I want to bring in now here on set with me retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos. He's an MS Now national security and intelligence analyst. So, Mark, talk about why you're talking about us as in a serious pickle right now. Because I think you and I, as we were having a conversation before coming on, you talk about the tactical and military brilliance that's been shown on the part of the U.S. military, and yet it's difficult to define that wholly as successful when there's no clear strategy or exit plan.
So, Ali, you're right. So it's tactical military brilliance. I think we're hitting the right targets. As far as the Pentagon goes, the war is progressing as they had planned in terms of degrading the Iranian military. But then you get the strategic incoherence and really a lack of planning for not only the day after, but the notion of the enemy gets a vote. Yeah. And you see this over several facets. One is the Iranian use of these Shahed drones. How is this not actually taken into account? What you do in these campaigns is you do left of boom planning. What will the Iranians do? any Iranian military analyst, and if there are any left in government, would have said, well, yes, the Iranians are going to launch these drones. The same drones, of course, they provided to the Russians that have been so effective in Ukraine.
Yeah.
What else are they going to do? They're going to close the Strait of Hormuz. This should not be a surprise. They're going to attack targets in the Gulf states. And so it seems that there was this lack of planning and preparation. There was tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Americans stuck in the Middle East. Yes. The State Department didn't do the basic functions you do at an embassy, which is plan to get them out. So I think for many people like myself who can understand and see the military goals of degrading the Iranian military, it's coupled with almost incompetence in the political dynamics and where to go next. And of course, the messaging campaign is all over the place. Every different cabinet official seems to have a different end goal. And then there's the notion that certainly the Israelis are a little worried about, that Trump's just going to declare victory and go home. And what does that leave you? An Iranian leader, perhaps more hardline than his father, his predecessor, an angry Iran lashing out at the neighbors, and an Iran that's going to rush towards a nuclear program. And so I'm not sure exactly where we are right now in a military campaign that seems to be going well, but no really strategic coherence, and that's a problem.
And I think that's what you and I were talking about as the potential worst-case scenario here, right? Having put all of this military and as well as American lives that have been lost on the line, only to at some random point pull out. I mean, again, Trump keeps sort of shifting the goalposts of we're close to done. No, we're doing our most brutal bombing campaign yet. It is very whiplashing for folks who are just trying to follow along, let alone get an understanding of why we had to do this in the first place. And so when you see competing messaging on end goals, when you see competing messaging on why we had to go in the first place, as someone who follows the intelligence, what does it tell you about what the administration was seeing that, A, prompted them to do this in the first place, but then, B, what they're looking towards as metrics of success going forward?
I think they really planned this on a napkin in the Oval. Ordinarily, in any administration, you have a National Security Council staff. There will be Iran experts there, experts in the intelligence community, in the State Department. There are, deputies committee meetings, principal committee meetings run by the National Security Advisor. I don't know if any of that happened. And so where was that expertise to plan all of this? And I think there's another part of this that I think that to me, and Ali, you and I have talked about it before, is the idea of packing up and going home.
Yeah.
And for all the reasons I told you just now about how that might be dangerous, in essence, we're going to just be preparing for the next round with Iran. But there's also the ethical and moral component of Trump's promise to the Iranian people. Remember, he said help is on its way.
Yes.
Right now, the Iranian people are not rising up. Apparently, the repression apparatus of Iran is still strong. They're threatening people do not come on the streets.
Well, it's a continuation of the former government.
And perhaps even more hardline. But if we walk away, what does that tell the tens of thousands of Iranians who were killed? Now, I'm not advocating for continuing the war. It sounds like that. Right. But there is that notion of we promised help is on its way. If we go home right now, I think that's an ethical and moral disaster for Trump and the United States.
And I think that was always looming in the background prior to these strikes being launched. You and I had those conversations here on set, and it's certainly something that I also heard echoed on Capitol Hill, even from people who are saying, I do not want a sustained war. I do not want to see U.S. troops go in. And frankly, hearing Senator Blumenthal with that warning there, that's what it sounds like they're driving towards, I have to question if that does change the landscape at all on Capitol Hill for Republicans who have been seemingly very keen to cede every decision-making power that Congress constitutionally has to this White House and to this president. Right. I think there's also another piece of this that we haven't really pulled on or explored enough. So Russia is continuing to deny it's sharing intelligence with Iran. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff was actually asked about that yesterday during an interview with CNBC. Listen to his response.
Do we think that the Russians have shared intelligence about the location of U.S. military assets? And if they have, why would we be giving waivers on Russian oil sanctions?
Well, I'm not an intel officer, so I can't tell you. I can tell you that yesterday on the call with the president, the Russians said that they have not been sharing. That's what they said. Mm-hmm. So, we can take them at their word, but they did say that. And yesterday morning, independently, Jared and I had a call with Ushakov, who reiterated the same. So, that's a better question for the intel people, but let's hope that they're not sharing.
Good news. I have an intel person. Take it away.
A preposterous statement that Witkoff is taking the assurances of Putin that Russians are not providing targeting data. to the Iranians. I mean, the idea that he would actually say this gives us kind of post-traumatic stress from Helsinki. Remember the famous question from MS Now's Jonathan Lemire, asking President Trump, who do you believe in this? And he said, well, I believe Putin about Russian interference. And so this is something that I think for a lot of us not only was profoundly disturbing because it seems like the administration is taking Russia's assurances.
No, they're literally saying we can take their word.
But it also shows, and I'm going to be a little harsh here, this could be the worst diplomatic envoy in the history of United States diplomacy. I mean, Witkoff has done so many things, in essence, siding with Moscow. It is amazing to many of us how he still is employed, but apparently he has the trust of the president, and he's still there, and he's still going to be involved, both, of course, in the Iran negotiations, if there are those, and now what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. But that was a preposterous statement.
He's involved in all of the major negotiations that this administration undertakes, often sidelining the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who increasingly, when you look at the actions of this Trump administration, it feels like it's following a Rubio worldview, which is to say more of a neoconservative worldview, taking action in places like Venezuela, potentially in Cuba, certainly in Iran, the way that it's looking at other conflicts around the world. And so when you look at Witkoff being the person who's in the room doing these negotiations, yet knowing Rubio's worldview, as many of us do, because he's been such a key player in Washington, I do think it's an interesting piece for us to follow based on who's got proximity to the president, what policy decisions might come next. Anyway, all of that is important as we continue to move forward. Retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos, thank you, as always, helping us understand a little better what's going on here.